He killed 304 children in a single afternoon. He made their parents watch. He made the parents do it. He had been building this for 20 years, out in the open in California, applauded. And every powerful man in that state protected him until the day the bodies were counted. James Warren Jones was born in 1931 in Crete, Indiana, a small town in the American Midwest. His father was a disabled veteran of the First World War who could barely work. His mother was fearlessly intelligent and openly told her son from the time he could understand words that he was destined for greatness, that he would be a prophet in her exact language. He was strange from the start. Neighbors remembered him running his own religious services in the backyard when he was 6 or 7 years old, preaching to other children he had gathered. He held funerals for dead animals, mice, birds, with full liturgies he had memorized. One woman later told an interview that his services frightened her, though she could not, decades later, say exactly why. He read voraciously, not just the Bible. He read Marx, he read Stalin's biographies, he read Hitler's speeches, not to intimidate them, but by his own way, later account, to study how a man moves a crowd. He was, by all accounts, brilliant. He was also, by all accounts, hollow at the center in a way that people noticed but could not name. By his early 20s, he was a preacher. He was already doing the thing he would spend the rest of his life doing, mixing genuine, radical social ideas with a personal need for total control over the people around him. Here's the part that matters. In 1950s American Midwest, Jim Jones was one of the very first white preachers to fully integrate his church. Black families and white families sat together in his pews at a time when doing so, in some states, was still illegal. He adopted black children into his own family. He publicly, loudly condemned segregation. He meant it. That is what makes this story hard to tell. He was not a fraud pretending to care about civil rights so he could exploit people. He cared about civil rights. He also, at the same time, cared about controlling every single human being who came close to him. Both things were true from the very beginning. And the second thing was what would eventually kill nearly 1,000 people. By the mid-1960s, John had moved his church, which he called the People's Temple, to Northern California. First to a small town called Redwood Valley, then by 1972, into the heart of San Francisco. San Francisco in the 1970s was the most politically progressive city in America. It was the center of the civil rights movement's western branch, of the gay rights movement, of the anti-war left. And into that city walked a charismatic white preacher with a fully integrated congregation, a network of soup kitchens of the poor, a drug rehabilitation program, senior care homes, a legal aid office, and the ability to deliver thousands of volunteers on 24 hours notice to any political cause that asked. The political establishment of California loved him. He was photographed with the governor of California, Jerry Brown. He was photographed with Rosalind Carter, wife of the president. He was appointed to the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission by the mayor, George Mascone. A personal political appointment. Willie Brown, then a state assemblyman who would later become mayor, publicly compared him to Martin Luther King. Harvey Milk, the pioneering gay rights politician, wrote him letters of praise. Jones and his church were useful, then turned out voters. They filled campaigns events with cheering crowds. They provided free labor for progressive causes. In exchange, the political class of California gave him something more valuable than any of that. They gave him cover. Because behind the soup kitchens and the integrated services, something else was happening inside the People's Temple, and by the mid-70s, it was not a secret. Former members had begun leaving the church and they were talking. They described public beatings inside the church during services. Jones ordered members who had disobeyed him to be struck with a paddle in front of the congregation, sometimes dozens of times, sometimes children. They described catharsis sessions where members were forced to publicly confess sexual acts, real or invented, that Jones then used to control them for years afterward. They describe being pressured to sign over their homes, their savings, their inheritances, their social security checks to the temple. They describe sleep deprivation. They describe being cut off from family members outside the church. They describe Jones taking sexual advantage of both female and male members of his congregation, sometimes claiming that his sexual attention was a spiritual gift. They described him staging fake miracles, planting fake healings in his audiences, using medical rejection rings, surgical bandages containing chicken livers that he would palm from women's bodies and hold up as cancers he had removed. They describe children being taken from their biological parents inside the church and raised communally under Jones' control. In August 1977, a magazine called New West published a lengthy investigation containing most of these allegations, sourced from more than a dozen former members with names attached. Real people, real testimony, widely available. The political establishment of California did nothing. Nobody withdrew their support. Nobody returned to campaign appearances. Nobody publicly distanced themselves. The city officials who had appointed him kept him in his positions. The letters of endorsement did not stop. There were two reasons. First, Jones had genuinely built political leverage. He could not turn out thousands of votes. And California progressive politics of the late 1970s ran on razor-thin margins. Second, and this is the harder truth, he was defending the right causes, civil rights, racial integration, care for the poor, attacking and meant in the polarized politics of the moment, appearing to attack those causes. Nobody wanted to be the person who took down the church that fed San Francisco's homeless because of allegations about what happened inside. So the warning sat there on record and the machine kept moving. By August of 1977, when the article ran, Jim Jones was already flying his most devoted followers to a compound he had been quietly building for years in the jungle of a small South American country called Guyana. He called it Jonestown. The people who would die there had already started arriving. Jonestown was on paper an agricultural commune, a place where the People's Temple was building a new kind of society, free from American racism, free from capitalism, free from persecution. That was the story sent home to family members. That was the story printed in the pamphlets. The reality was a prison in the middle of a rainforest. By 1978, there was about 1,000 people living in Jonestown, most of them black, most of them poor, many of them elderly. Their passports had been taken away from them. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Loudspeakers played Jones' voice around the clock, often for hours at a time, delivering paranoid rants about the CIA, about American racism, about the enemies who were coming. Sleep was rationed. Food was rationed. Medical care was controlled by Jones in a small circle. Jones himself was, by the accountants of survivors, using enormous quantities of amphetamines and barbiturates, and his behavior was becoming more and more erratic. He had begun months earlier running what he called White Nights, drills in which the entire community was assembled and told they were about to die, that the enemies had come, that they had to drink poison together. The community would drink what they were told was poison. Nothing would happen. Jones would announce it had been a test of their loyalty. Then it would send them back to work. By November of 1978, family members in the United States had grown desperate. They had lost contact with relatives inside Jonestown. They had heard stories of abuse from a few who had escaped. They organized. They pressured a congressman from California, Leo Ryan, to fly to Guyana and investigate. On November 17, 1978, Congressman Ryan arrived at Jonestown with a small delegation of journalists and concerned family members. He spent one day inside the compound. Some residents told him privately that they wanted to leave. He offered to take anyone who wished to come with him back to the United States. 15 residents accepted his offer. The next day, at a small airstrip outside Jonestown, Jones' armed guard opened fire at the departing group. Leo Ryan was shot dead. There were 3 journalists and one of the defecting members. Others were wounded and left for dead on the tarmac. While that was happening, back at Jonestown, Jim Jones was gathering the rest of the community for one last white night. Only this one was real. There's an audio recording of what happened next.
So my opinion is that we be kind to children and be kind to seniors and take the portion like they used to take in ancient Greece and step over quietly, because we are not committing suicide. It's a revolutionary act. We can't go back. They won't leave us alone. They're now going back to tell more lies, which means more congressmen, and there's no way we can survive. But to me, death is not a fearful thing. It's living that's treacherous.
The recording proves that this was not a suicide. It was at most partly a suicide. For the majority of the 918 people who died at that afternoon, including 304 children, it was murder. Children were injected with cyanide by adults acting under Jones' direction. Elderly people were held down. Members who refused were shot. Members who tried to run into the jungle were pursued. The recording captures Jones alternating between calling the deaths a revolutionary act, the language of Soviet-era martyrdom, and simply ordering that people be forced to drink faster. Guards armed with crossbows and rifles surrounded the pavilion. At the end of the recording, when almost everyone is dead, Jim Jones' voice can be heard giving one last instruction. Then a single gunshot. He shot himself in the head. He was 47 years old. By the nightfall of November 18, 1978, 918 people were dead in the jungle. It remains the largest single loss of American civilian life by unnatural causes until the attacks of September 11, 2001. And it happened in a compound that had been openly, publicly building for more than a decade, funded largely with money Jim Jones had collected from congregants in California. While the political establishment of that state had known enough for long enough to do something and had chosen again and again not to. So who killed the people of Jonestown? Jim Jones killed them. That is the direct answer, and it is true. He gave the orders to build a compound. He created the theology of death. Then he used as the excuse to carry it out. But this channel has spent almost every episode arguing that famous crimes and famous deaths are almost never the work of a single hand. There's almost always a machine behind the man, a set of institutions, incentives, and looking the order ways to make the disaster possible. Guyana had the press machine. Bundy had the criminal justice machine that could not see him because he had the right face. Michael Jackson had the entertainment machine that built him at 5 and destroyed him at 50. Jones had a different kind of machine, and it is the reason this story still matters. He had the machine of good causes used as cover. He was defeating civil rights, so his political friends refused to look at what he was doing to his congregation. He was feeding the poor, so his major kept him on the city commission after the allegations had been printed in a magazine. He was delivering votes, so the governor and the state assembly kept posing for photographs. He had the right words in the right decade, in the right city, and it purchased him a wall of protection that only broke when a congressman finally flew to the jungle and got shot at the airstrip. This is a warning that has not aged. Anyone can defend the right causes. Anyone can say the right words. The words are not the evidence of character. The causes are not evidence of care. And the moment a movement decides that its favorite people cannot be criticized because they are on the right side, that movement has just built the exact kind of shelter that predators need in order to operate for years. 918 people died in that jungle because the people who should have stopped Jim Jones liked what he was saying too much to ask what he was doing. The children died first. Their names, most of them, still are not remembered. The names of the monsters stay, the names of the victims disappear. The machine always works this way.